Marcus finally made $500 in a single afternoon, and it made him feel like a criminal. Not because he did something illegal, but because for the first time in 6 years, he didn't suffer for his paycheck. He had spent his life believing that sweat was the collateral for wealth, and the moment the money arrived without the sweat, something in him didn't trust it. That feeling had a name, and it was costing him everything. In our last video, Marcus sat across from a man who had built a $300 million empire from a single truck. He heard a diagnosis that cracked the foundation of his identity. 3 invisible walls, built by his own beliefs, running underneath 90% of every financial decision he had ever made. But seeing the cage doesn't open the door. Marcus wanted a strategy. Instead, the Tycoon gave him a weathered copy of Think and Grow Rich and told him he wasn't allowed to read it yet. The woman with the notebook met him the next morning. She didn't ask about his hustle. She asked about his filter. For the next 30 days, she said, you are going to find evidence that contradicts your core belief, that money is hard to make. Stop looking at what people do. Start looking at how they think. Every person you meet who has created income without simply adding hours, notice them. Study the thinking behind the move, not the tactic, the thought. She closed her notebook. One piece of evidence, that's the entire assignment. Find one real example, and bring it back to me. Marcus started paying attention the following Monday. It was uncomfortable at first. He had spent 6 years with his head down, focused entirely on his own work, his own hours, his own numbers. Looking up felt unfamiliar, almost indulgent, like he was wasting time he should have been spending earning. 3 weeks in, he found the first crack in the wall. What he noticed would change the question he asked for the rest of his life. Her name was Patricia. Same title as Marcus, same salary, same hours at the office. But on 2 weekday evenings, she was consulting for smaller firms, using the exact same supply chain knowledge she applied at her day job, packaging it as an outside perspective worth $150 an hour. Same knowledge, different packaging, 6 times the hourly return. Marcus realized something that stopped him cold. His hard work wasn't dedication. It was a form of cowardice. It was easier to stay exhausted in a rideshare car at $14 an hour than to do the uncomfortable mental work of asking, who needs what I already know, and how do I charge for the outcome instead of the hour? He watched Patricia for 2 weeks before he said anything. Then one morning he asked her how she had started. Someone asked me a question I already knew the answer to, she said, and offered to pay me for the answer. I said yes. Then I said yes again. Eventually I stopped waiting to be asked and started offering. Marcus brought that back to the woman. She didn't ask how to make more money, he said, holding the phone to his ear. She asked what she already knew that someone else needed. That's a different question entirely. And a different question leads to completely different answers. There's a name for that, the woman said. Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose, the decision to stop wandering toward money and start directing your specific knowledge toward a specific outcome. Patricia didn't find a new skill. She found a new question. She paused. Now ask it. This is the part most people skip. They change the information they consume. They don't change the questions they ask. Marcus was about to find out what happens when you finally do. Marcus thought about it seriously for the first time. 3 years as a project coordinator at a logistics firm, supply chain operations, vendor relationships, fulfillment inefficiencies. He had quietly fixed 3 broken processes in the past year without being asked. The fixes had saved the firm an estimated $40,000 in operational waste. He knew something valuable. He had just never thought of it as something worth packaging. Who needs what you know? The woman asked. He thought about it for 3 days. Then he identified 3 small e-commerce businesses within his extended network that were losing money on inefficient fulfillment processes, the exact problem he had solved twice at his day job. He reached out to all 3 with a single paragraph. Specific problem, specific outcome. 2 responded. 1 hired him. The engagement took 6 hours. The check was for $500, $83 an hour versus $14. He hadn't worked harder. He hadn't found a new skill. He hadn't updated his LinkedIn, attended a seminar, or applied for a better job. He had changed the question his brain was searching for an answer to. The woman had a name for what he had just done. Linguistic Engineering, she said when he called. The old question, how do I make more money, leads your brain toward effort, more hours, more grind. The new question, How does my knowledge travel without me? Leads your brain toward leverage. Those two questions live in completely different financial universes, and your brain will only ever find what it's been sent to look for. The result wasn't motivational. It was mathematical. He didn't just have $500. He had proof that his old life was a lie. He dropped the rideshare driving the next day. The book was still on his desk, still closed, but for the first time, Marcus didn't feel like he was waiting to be ready. He felt like he was becoming it. And then the woman told him something that reframed everything he had just experienced. One engagement isn't a result, she said. It's a signal. The result is what happens when you build a system around the signal. That's what the book is for. And that's what comes next. If you're not following Tycoon logic, you're probably still asking the small question. How do I make more money? Getting small answers that lead back to more hours, more jobs, more exhaustion. But if you are, you're learning what the 1% figured out long before you started counting hours. High-level income isn't a reward for your effort. It's a reward for your absence. In the next video, the woman introduces Marcus to the manual. We are finally opening Chapter 1 of Think and Grow Rich. But we aren't reading it for inspiration. We are reading it for the napkin math that turns a $500 signal into a $5 million system. The numbers in the next video will change how you look at the work you've already done. Subscribe, and I'll see you there.